There once was a love starting to bloom, with Ginny and Paul her possible groom. But back at Packanack there's a maniac in a sack.
Welcome to Horror Shuffle.
Hello, yes, welcome to episode 14 of the Horror Shuffle. And yes, this should have been the 13th episode, but alas, I am a slave to my picker wheel. Oh, before I get into anything, I have a stupid correction to make. In my last episode on Maximum Overdrive, I made a comment about the first ATM opening in London exactly 20 years before the events in Maximum Overdrive. Well, it was actually the end of the movie when the Earth gets out of the tail of the comet. That date was 20 years after. But really, who gives a shit? Ryan, shut up. Alright, here we go. I'm really hoping to get to a Nightmare on Elm Street or Halloween movie before any more Friday the 13th films, but we'll see. No matter what, though, I am excited to talk about this film. It's one of my all-time favorites. I got to see it in a theater around Halloween time like 15 years ago, probably more like 20, and it was awesome seeing it with a crowd of people. The Friday the 13th series is my favorite of the big three, Jason, Michael, Freddy. I've talked about how I grew up watching these, and we had rented them and used 2 VCRs to record them, and the first 4 Friday the 13th films fit on one tape. Possibly because my mom edited out the nudity and sex stuff. She even edited out the weird aerobics video Axel was watching in part 4. I remember it cut from him starting to kiss the nurse, then suddenly she leaves, and suddenly Axel is killed. But I don't think I've said this before. I had a TV in my room connected to a VCR, and the TV was an old black and white TV that I found upstairs at my grandma's house. So I used to watch the Friday the 13th movies in black and white half the time, and it was really cool. I don't think I've told this on here before, but I remember in elementary school we were playing Hangman, and everyone else is putting up like famous people like Michael Jackson, Harrison Ford, household names, and I didn't quite understand the whole term of like household names. I just took somebody that I knew and it was my turn. So everyone's guessing letters, and we got to where like pretty much the whole name was showing, and everyone's like, who the hell is Dana Kimmel? Because I put Dana Kimmel, who plays Chris in Friday the 13th Part 3, and yeah, I thought everyone would know who she is because, she's the main character in Friday the 13th Part 3. So yeah, I didn't quite get that. Okay, you get it. I love these movies. Let's jump into this movie. I wish I could say that I'm wearing my lucky brown underwear, but I don't have any. Now, be aware, of course, this is not a spoiler-free podcast. In fact, I'm going to be spoiling the shit out of it. When I watch a movie for an episode, I have a bingo card with various things to watch for. I think I've done it for the past 4 movies, and so far I have not gotten a bingo. For this movie, this is what I had to look for. On this bingo card is a guitar, a verbal reference to another horror movie, sunglasses, someone becomes unconscious, Dick Miller, a character trips more than once, a morgue worker eating, a pre-90s music poster, an arrow with or without a bow, popcorn, someone being punched, a dartboard, a typewriter, an owl hooting, the use of a shovel, a character mocked for being scared, swimming, a background character looks directly at the camera, a character drops or doesn't take a weapon, a character is set on fire, a record player, binoculars, telescope, or microscope, so one of those three items, a cat scare, and a cardboard box. And then, of course, the free space in the middle is gratuitous nudity. All right, and I still don't know what will happen if I get a bingo. I think I'm just kind of doing it for fun. I don't know. All right, so of course, it has been said that there was never any intentions for the first Friday the 13th to have a sequel. But the first one made so much money, they figured out a way. And thankfully, they ignored logic and did make another, and another, and another, and another. The great Tom Savini did not return for this movie, nor did director Sean Cunningham. This movie was directed by Steve Miner. He did the second unit directing on the original film. He also directs part 3. Later on, he would direct House, Warlock, and Halloween H2O. The movie is written by Ron Kurz.
It's got a death curse.
No. Ron Kurz. Oh, crazy Ralph. What would we do without you? The movie starts with the great Paramount logo. Then we see a kid walking down a street singing Itsy Bitsy Spider as he's walking through a puddle. And right away, I want to point out how the 1990 movie, or the 1990 It miniseries, begins the same way. In this one, the kid's name is Jesse, and his mother yells for him to come in.
Down came the rain and washed the spider out. Out came the sun and dried up all the rain. And the itsy bitsy spider crawled up the spout again.
You get in this house right now.
Oh, Mom!
Right now.
In the It miniseries, there's a girl riding a tricycle named Lori Ann, and she's singing the Itsy Bitsy Spider, and then her mother yells for her to come in.
Down came the rain and washed the spider out. Out came the sun and dried up all the rain. And the itsy bitsy spider climbed up the spout again.
Come on, Lorianne. It's gonna storm.
Of course, one difference is Jason doesn't kill this kid like Pennywise does. By the way, the little girl at the beginning of the It miniseries is Shaylin Simmons. I don't know if I'm pronouncing her first name right, but she is actually in Final Destination 3, one of the girls that gets killed in the tanning booth, and also the main girl in Tucker and Dale versus Evil. She's like the girl that they quote kidnap. But yeah, that's the little girl from the It miniseries. I love how the kid stamps his foot out of frustration. I wonder if anyone thought that this was Jason as a kid. Because his name is Jesse, but I could see people in the theater in 1981 hearing it as Jason. Like some horror nerds like me who loved the first one and remembered the name of the boy from the first one who drowned. And did they think he was going to drown in this puddle? All right. So then we see another set of legs enter the frame, walking through the water. And this, by the way, becomes a thing in this movie. This, of course, is Jason all grown up. I'd like to think he's softly humming or thinking the tune of Itsy Bitsy Spider also. Now, in this scene, Jason is actually played by a woman, the costume designer Ellen Lutter, who went on to be the costume designer for most of Adam Sandler's films. Wait a minute. Now, I'm trying to remember. Is there a scene in Uncut Gems where Adam Sandler has a bag over his head? That was probably something else. Anyway, Jason approaches a house and takes notice of an upstairs room with lights on, something we see in part 3 as well. We then see Alice Hardy, played by Adrienne King, returning from the first film, and we then see the end of the first film through Alice's dream, as she is asleep on her bed. It's kind of funny that she jerks herself awake Not at the part where Jason pulls her into the water, but after telling the cop,
In the lake, the one who attacked me, the one who pulled me underneath the water.
Ma'am, we didn't find any boy.
Then he's still there, still there, still there, still there.
anytime I hear the word still there, I hear that repeating echo. Alice's phone rings, and it's her mother, who clearly has an issue with something Alice is doing, like maybe living or staying near Camp Crystal Lake after what happened. I've always assumed that this place is in a town near Crystal Lake. It would have to be since Jason is coming there. It could also be Steve Christie's place, possibly, because there was something going on between the two in the first one, and Steve Christie obviously lived somewhere nearby. So yeah, maybe, he's dead, so I wonder if, like, somehow she, like, met his, well, I don't know, maybe he had no other family or something, so she was able to maybe she's squatting there, I don't know. Adrienne King improvised this conversation with her mother. She ends the call with her mom and goes to the kitchen, and we see a drawing of a woman, and I used to think that this is supposed to be Mrs. Voorhees. I think because it seemed like who she would draw. Kind of like how the guy in the Lover's Vow segment of the Tales from the Dark Side movie draws the gargoyle creature. But I don't know, maybe it's a self-portrait, I'm not sure. Alice passes by a framed French bicycle ad on the wall, perhaps a gift from Crazy Ralph? This poster features an expensive chainless bicycle and was published in 1896. Something I'm sure you all want to know. Alice takes a quick shower, and I mean quick. She turns the water on, it runs for 12, maybe 13 seconds, and then she shuts it off and throws open the shower curtain. The phone rings again, and she assumes it's her mom again, but no one says anything, and they hang up. So I don't know if that's supposed to be Jason that called her. As far as I'm concerned, it isn't, but it gets her spooked enough to lock the door. Although it is funny to picture Jason putting coins in a payphone or looking in a phone book. Can Jason read? I don't know. Anyway, she hears a loud noise from the kitchen and goes to investigate, grabbing an ice pick for protection. She goes over to the open kitchen window where there appears to be stairs right outside the window. As she gets closer, a cat jumps through the window, scaring the shit out of everyone except me, because that's the first thing I can cross off my bingo card. A cat scare. Yes! Alice puts some water heating for tea and then goes to get the cat something to eat from the fridge, and, well, let's have a look what's in the fridge. There's salad dressing, V8 juice, bagels, applesauce, milk,
Soda, OJ, purple stuff.
and the severed head of Mrs. Voorhees. It kind of looks like Mrs. Voorhees' head is becoming purple stuff. Alice screams and is suddenly grabbed from behind and stabbed in the side of the head with the ice pick she had put down. Now, I'm not going to cross that off the bingo card, not taking a weapon or dropping a weapon, because as far as she knew, the cat was the only intruder, so she really had no reason to keep that weapon. I mean, she should have, of course, but anyway, that poor kitty cat too, tries to help. Of course, the cat would eventually eat Alice, because I guess that's what happens, Anyway, the tea kettle starts whistling, and Jason, possibly irritated by the noise, takes it off the burner and sets it on an unheated one. Then we get the title. The words Friday the 13th explode to reveal the words Part 2. The opening credits are accompanied by Harry Manfredini's iconic score. And I love this score. I think Harry Manfredini is very underrated, especially in the horror genre. Um, and I know a lot of people criticize him for like ripping off Bernard Herrmann, like his score from Psycho and other things. But I don't know. Like, what if Harry Manfredini has like what if he has a time machine and he went back in time and played at somebody's high school dance like in the 50s, and like some guys like, "Hey Bernie, it's your cousin Marvin Herman. You know that new sound you're looking for? Well, listen to this." So I'm not sure how Jason found her. It apparently took him 2 months to find her because that's when this supposedly takes place, 2 months after the first one. Maybe she went back to camp. That's a possibility. Or I don't know, he might have just stalked around this town until he found her, and he brought his mother's head with him. Maybe he carried it in the sack that he later wears on his head. Ugh. Also, the ice pick used in this scene was supposed to retract, but it didn't, and it actually hurt Adrienne King and made a mark on her skin, which you can actually see before Jason stabs her. And the person playing Jason had to aim for that mark on her face. And the person playing Jason in this scene is production assistant Jerry Wallace, who is credited as the Prowler. The Shout Factory Deluxe Edition DVD set has an extended death scene where Alice turns and you actually see the ice pick coming out of the other side of her face. And it's really cool. I really wish they had kept that in there. I'm gonna have to order that DVD set and so that I can watch them. Although they are on YouTube, you can look them up. But I kind of wish someone would edit that into the movie because I want to see that every time now. It is disappointing that Adrian King is killed off this early in the movie. And I know you hear different stories. I used to read everywhere that Adrian King didn't want to be in the second movie because after the first movie came out, she was stalked by this crazy obsessed fan who actually like introduced himself to her, and she be, got to where she trusted him and would divulge information about her stalker to this guy, not knowing that he actually was her stalker. And like he ended up at her like apartment or house. Like she ended up being at gunpoint, I believe. So it was a really scary situation. But I know I've heard interviews, I'm pretty sure, unless I made it up in my head, that she said that she was surprised and disappointed when she learned that she was being killed at the beginning. So I don't really know what's true as far as that's concerned. Well, rest in peace, Alice Hardy. Next, we're introduced to two new characters, Jeff and Sandra, played by Bill Randolph and Marta Kober. Sandra actually ends up being the sister of Rob from Part 4. So they arrive in whatever town this is. I assume it's the same town Alice was killed in and the town from the first one, because who was there with his bicycle and dressed to the fives? That's right, Crazy Ralph. Finally, Ralph is back. This makes 5 out of the 14 episodes or movies with a character named Ralph. Oh, it's been too long. And he started it all. Yes, I know he's the same Ralph from the first one and from my first episode, but it still counts. Jeff and Sandra call their friend Ted from a payphone, and in the background you see a tow truck back up to the front of their truck and start hooking it up to the tow truck, and then Crazy Ralph comes up to Jeff and Sandra and says,
I told the others. They didn't believe me. You're all doomed. You're all doomed.
oh, I mean, right off the bat, Crazy Ralph's greatest hits. And I love their reaction. They're like, "What the fuck?" But they don't say anything and they continue getting directions to Ted's place. Sandra notices that their truck is being towed and they chase after it, and Jeff is yelling at the driver.
This is my truck! Asshole! This is my truck!
They follow the truck around a corner to where Ted is, just a short distance away, so he was just keeping them busy with directions, playing a joke. Ted is played by Stu Charno. He was also in Christine, Sleepwalkers, and a good X-Files episode titled Clyde Bruckman's Final Repose. So Ted, Sandra, and Jeff head to the Packanack Lodge for camp counselor training. As they're driving there, Ted tells the bear and rabbit shitting in the woods joke.
A bear and a rabbit are taking a shit in the woods. The bear turns to the rabbit and says, "Excuse me, do you have problems with shit sticking to your fur?" And the rabbit says, "No." So the bear wiped his ass with the rabbit.
So that clip is actually Eddie Murphy from his comedy special Delirious, which came out in 1983, 2 years after Friday the 13th Part 2 came out. So did Eddie Murphy get this joke from Friday the 13th Part 2? I know Eddie Murphy is a fan of horror movies. In fact, a little bit after that joke, he talks about watching Poltergeist in the special. And I know I heard in an interview about how Eddie Murphy met Wes Craven. Like, Wes Craven, like, went up to Eddie Murphy, who was playing a piano, and Eddie Murphy looked at him and said, "Baby's fat, fat and juicy," which is a line from the Hills Have Eyes, which of course is a Wes Craven movie. So yeah, I bet he heard that joke in the movie and thought, that's a good joke. Jeff, Sandra, and Ted continue driving, but they have to stop because there's a dead tree limb or part of a dead tree lying in the middle of the road. Now, I had to stop and check because I figured it would be close. This branch in the middle of the road happens about 17 and a half minutes in. In Friday the 13th Part 3, at about 21 minutes and 19 seconds, they have to stop in a van because a man is lying in the middle of the road. So that's kind of funny how it happens in Part 2 and 3 at kind of around the same time. And now, I always wondered if Jason put this branch there. It kind of seems like he might have, but I don't know, that'd be kind of weird. And in any case, Sandra finds a sign saying Camp Crystal Lake lying on the ground in the woods, and Ted tells them it's Camp Blood and that it's on the same lake as where they're going. They inquire about it, but Ted says he doesn't want to talk about it.
No way.
What's the problem?
If you want to hear about it, man, believe me.
Meanwhile, someone seems to be watching them. Could be Jason, could be super cyclist Crazy Ralph, but we do see a hand move a branch, and the person's wearing a plaid flannel sleeved shirt. And then we cut to another plaid flannel arm ringing a bell, and I imagine when people first watched this, when it came out, they thought this must be the killer ringing a bell. Ringing a bell. Uh-oh. Way down in New Jersey, killing counselors and teens. Way back up in the woods among the evergreens, there stood a shack made of junk canopies, where lived a country boy named Jason Voorhees. He never learned to talk or swim so well, but he could swing a machete just like a ring and a bell. Go, go. Go, Jason, go, go. Go, Jason, go, go. Go, Jason, go, go. Go, Jason, go, go. Jason be bad. I just lost the 2 listeners I had. He'd carry his mother's head in a gunny sack, then he put it on his head and went back to his shack. Alright, enough. Oh, man, if you're still listening, thank you. And actually, I should point out that Jason does talk in the flashback Mrs. Voorhees has in the first movie. But then again, Mrs. Voorhees was certainly delusional, so maybe she spoke in his voice even when he was alive. Like, she'd go to the store and be like, "Don't get Cheerios, Mommy. Get Frosted Flakes." "I will, Jason." But it was only because she wanted Frosted Flakes. All right. Anyway, the person ringing the bell is Paul Holt, played by John Fury. I recently saw him in a season 5 episode of CSI. The Friday the 13th game, by the way, did a good job of recreating this place, the Packanack Lodge. I really wish the game wouldn't have ended up a victim of the lawsuit between Sean Cunningham and Victor Miller, the writer of the original one, because it's such a fun game. All right. The first few people we see are characters that never get developed, and then, of course, we see Jeff and Sandra are there, and we meet Mark, played by Tom McBride, and Vicky, played by Lauren Marie Taylor. Mark declines Vicky's offer to help him get down the path in his wheelchair, and Ted follows playing one of his handheld video games. We then meet Terry, played by Kirsten Baker, running with her dog Muffin, and we get a gratuitous shot of Terry's butt as another character, Scott, played by Russell Todd, shoots a pebble at her butt with a slingshot, and she shoots him a look like, "Come on." Although she does smile as she's walking away, but nevertheless, I feel this is not a cool thing to do, and she definitely gets irritated with him later in the movie. I love that she's wearing a Mickey Mouse shirt. And by the way, I never knew that this place was called Packanack Lodge until the Friday the 13th game came out. Counting Ted, there are 13 people taking this training, 6 of which never really take part in the movie, which sucks for them. I mean, not the characters, but the actors. Yeah, I don't even think they have any lines in the film. Maybe the guy who arm wrestles Mark later. I don't know. So Paul addresses the counselors and mentions that they've all worked as counselors before. So you can't help but wonder, what the hell are they doing here? I mean, this in no way affects my love for this movie, but it just seems peculiar. And, like, what is their schedule? What's Paul's itinerary? It must be quite a course, seeing as how he needs an assistant, who we'll meet soon. Of course, Ted is also an assistant, I guess. So that's just weird. I don't know. I'm thinking back to when I went to camp in 6th grade. Aren't camp counselors usually just older high school kids? Anyway, Paul mentions that Vicky and Terry worked together before upstate, and Paul has evidently worked with Scott the Menace before. Yeah, and that's another thing. Did Scott really bring a slingshot there? That's weird. Paul also worked a season or 2 with Mark. We then see Crazy Ralph biking down the road and getting passed by a red Volkswagen Beetle driven by Ginny Field, played by Amy Steele. Amy was in April Fool's Day, an episode of the A-Team, and Quantum Leap, among other things. She also starred in The Powers of Matthew Starr with Peter Barton, who played Doug in Friday the 13th Part 4. So Amy, or Ginny, passes Crazy Ralph, and I was wishing that he'd shake his fist at her or something, but he just watches her go by. After she pulls in, Paul excuses himself and gives Ginny a hard time for being late, but then says he was starting to worry, and they kiss. So they are the Alice and Steve Christie of this film. Paul tells Ginny to move her car and says,
This place is starting to look like a Burger King.
"Oh man, Burger King sounds good right now." Paul also warns the seasoned counselors about axes, knives, saws, lanterns, and bears.
Oh my!
Axes, knives, saws, lanterns, and bears.
Oh my!
Axes, knives, saws, lanterns, and bears.
Oh my!
Axes, knives, saws, lanterns, and bears. Wait, that doesn't make sense. It wasn't like I was waiting for an echo. What the hell am I doing? I'm referencing Wizard of Oz and then Ghostbusters 2. What next? All right. Paul also warns the women to keep clean during their menstrual cycle. And this is because on August 13, 1967, 2 women were attacked and killed in Glacier National Park, Montana, and people speculated the bears were attracted to menstrual blood. But studies show that this is highly unlikely and that these were simply a couple of asshole bears. Speaking of August 13, the sequel to this film, Friday the 13th Part 3, was released on August 13, as was Jason Goes to Hell. And speaking of the Wizard of Oz, Bert Lahr, who played the Cowardly Lion, was also born on August 13, and yes, I did check. Of course, it was not a Friday. Neither were the grizzly bear attacks. Anyway, Ginny is having trouble starting her car, which is a nice setup for later. Paul comes to help and tells her to use some of the child psychology she's majoring in, which is another nice setup for later. The car backfires when he adjusts something, and he tells her to try again, and he ends up with a face full of exhaust. We then cut to later in the evening. Everyone's sitting outside by a campfire, roasting marshmallows, something people did a lot more before TVs were invented. By the way, one of the inventors of television, John Logie Baird, was born on August 13, not a Friday. So, Paul tells all the counselors about Jason and his mother and Alice disappearing. He also says they are the first to return here in 5 years and says that Jason is somewhere out there watching and waiting to kill and devour. And suddenly, a man dressed in animal pelts holding a spear and wearing a monstrous mask jumps out, screaming and acting like he's going to attack. But it turns out it's just Ted, and Paul says it's just a legend and basically dismisses it and says Camp Crystal Lake, or Camp Blood, is off limits. I really like this scene because it sets up the camp atmosphere, telling a scary story around a fire. And of course, this scene is used at the beginning of Part 4 to recap the first 3 movies, and it's done really effectively. Back inside, Mark arm wrestles and wins against one of the nameless counselors as Vicky is definitely falling for Mark. Scott asks Terry to dance, then Muffin after Terry declines. We see a POV shot as if someone is watching from outside. Scott makes Terry laugh talking to Muffin, and Muffin appears distraught after looking out the window, perhaps seeing a certain prowler. So Paul and Ginny are playing chess. Ginny wins and decides to head to bed. Sandra tells Jeff she wants to go to Camp Blood to check it out, and over the years I've heard and read people doubting that Sandra would be interested in that. But with how popular true crime is, honestly I think it's weirder that, like, Ginny and Terry and Vicky don't also want to go. Ginny gets dressed for bed and we see a shadow cast upon her cabin, someone walking nearby. It actually kind of looks like Freddy Krueger. So someone then knocks on Ginny's door, but no one is there when she goes to answer it. Well, not right away. Then, as she goes back inside, Paul is there, and he scares the shit out of her. But then they start kissing. We then see a pair of legs walking or prowling around outside. The camera pans up to reveal the prowler is Mr. Crazy Ralph. But he'd probably be like, please, just call me crazy. Of course, now he's more like Creepy Ralph watching Paul and Ginny make out. Suddenly, Ralph hears a twig snap and turns his head, and suddenly a pair of hands drops a length of barbed wire around his neck, and it simultaneously strangles him and cuts into his neck, and of course kills him. Ah, I love Ralph. He should have come back as a ghost, warning people. Come to think of it, Walt Gorney would have been a good Jacob Marley in A Christmas Carol. Ebenezer, you're doomed. Now, okay, a lot of people have an issue with the barbed wire coming down from above Ralph's head and the whole mechanics of it. And they say things like, what is Jason, like 10 feet tall? Well, first of all, what I've always figured is that Jason was holding the barbed wire with one hand and he swung it around the tree, catching it with his other hand, and then he brings it down around Ralph's neck. Kind of like how Eddie's killed in part 5 with the belt or strap around the tree. Now, yes, it does seem like Jason was just kind of hanging out there with the barbed wire wrapped around the tree, like waiting for a victim. So, yeah, that part is questionable. And as far as Jason being 10 feet tall, well, I mean, the actor playing Jason here isn't 10 feet tall. How did he do it? He's standing on something, obviously. Maybe a wood pile or a step ladder. Maybe there's a stump on the other side of the tree. Who knows? In any case, it's the end of Crazy Ralph. Hey, he had a good run. Or, well, bike ride. Oh, and something I never noticed in this scene before, you can see Paul and Ginny still making out in the background while Crazy Ralph is being killed. I never noticed that before.
You never paid any attention.
Yeah, apparently not. What if Jason took Crazy Ralph's hat and wore it for the rest of the movie? I kind of wish he would have. Okay, so we cut to the next day. Ginny wakes up to see a message from Ralph, or a message from Ralph. I'm going to leave this in because I wish. No, she sees a message from Paul on the mirror saying, "Beware of bears." And before Ralph was killed, Ginny tells Paul she has something to tell him, so she is evidently on her period. I guess that apparently that is what she wanted or needed to tell him. Next, we see the counselors, led by Ginny, running or jogging. Mark and Paul watch from the sidelines, and Mark is wearing a numbered jersey, but a different one than the one he wears later. This one is number 24. Later, it's 81. So, and this has been something I've been keeping track of. As they head back along the trail, Jason seems to be watching them. And I like that you can hear him breathing. It's kind of creepy. Ginny seems to sense that someone is watching and looks out into the woods, seemingly right at him, but she doesn't see him. And I wish it showed what she was looking at and that you could see like a well-hid, sack-headed Jason near a birch tree or something. That would have been really cool if, like maybe you wouldn't have seen it now because you didn't know, at this point we don't know what Jason looks like in the movie. So like after you finish watching and then you'd come back and then like you could see him like, yeah, by like a birch tree because it's white and like he's well hid. I think that would have been really cool. We then see sweet little Muffin going off-road into the woods and stopping at a pair of feet, presumably Jason's, and then suddenly we cut to a bunch of hot dogs being cooked on a grill. Jesus Christ. Aw, poor Muffin. We see Ginny cutting wood with a chainsaw and Ted is making the hot dogs. He's like the camp's Mrs. Voorhees, I guess. I wonder how good of a cook she was, Mrs. Voorhees. I bet she could only make like 3 things. Like the camp's menu included meatloaf, chili, and tuna salad. Anyway, there's a funny scene between Ted and Jeff where Ted yells, "Come and get 'em," and Jeff is standing right next to him and says, "I'm here." Terry goes off to look for Muffin, and it seems like someone is watching her, and it really seems like she should clearly see them as she looks directly at them, and like maybe she did see something because it seems like she thinks it could be Muffin because she's staring straight ahead but it's as if Muffin is 6 feet tall. Of course, Muffin could be standing on, a wood pile or a stepladder or a stump. So, yeah, whatever. Paul hollers to Terry that lunch is ready, and Ginny returns the chainsaw to a cabin or a tool shed. She seems to see someone or something watching her. Next, everyone hits the beach. People are swimming, so yes, hey, I can cross that off the bingo card. Swimming. Hopefully, someone has sunglasses too. Okay, now Sandra talks Jeff into sneaking away to see Camp Blood, and while doing so, she calls him chicken shit. So hey, I'm gonna cross off a character being mocked for being scared on the bingo card. While Jeff and Sandra sneak away, some people are jumping off the raft. Ted is sitting in a lifeguard tower, which is where you could find a med spray in the Friday the 13th game. Ginny, Vicky, and Mark are next to Ted, sharing jokes.
Ready? What's green and red and goes 100 miles an hour? What? Frog in a blender. That wasn't fun.
It's brown and sits on a piano.
Your face.
Beethoven's last movement.
I should listen to the rest of that Eddie Murphy comedy special to see if any of those jokes are in there. No. And by the way, I don't mean to, I'm not putting down Eddie Murphy. He's obviously one of the funniest people ever. And actually, he probably was saying that joke before recording the special. So maybe Ron Kurz, the writer of this movie, saw Eddie Murphy before that was recorded and got the joke from there. But I don't know. Who knows? Sandra and Jeff continue on their way, and we see Jason step out from behind a tree and follow them. Jeff and Sandra step over a no trespassing sign and some barbed wire. Hey, perhaps that's where Jason got the barbed wire he killed Crazy Ralph with. They end up finding the remains of, as Sandra says, what appears to be a dog, and Jeff says it's too mangled to tell. No. Come on, it's Muffin. It sucks, and I wish it wasn't, but it's Muffin. Suddenly, a hand reaches into frame and touches Jeff's shoulder. It's a police officer. So actually, it may have been him following them all along. And now there's a part in this scene where they show the person following them, and they show the bottom of their shoe as they're walking. And I remember this used to be used when the movie was shown on the USA Network, and this scene of him walking would be used when it came back from commercial, saying, "We now return to Friday the 13th Part 2." And the USA Network logo would be on the bottom of the shoe. The officer hauls Jeff and Sandra back to Packanack Lodge, and he tells Paul that he better keep his people away from there, and then we get one of my favorite exchanges of dialogue.
You're not even going to reprimand him? No punishment? What kind of place is this?
Ginny,
Yes, Paul.
no seconds on dessert for Jeff and Sandra tonight.
Jeff and Sandra decide not to tell Terry about what they saw. But really, that's what they should have told the cop, that they were looking for Muffin. That would have been a good excuse, but they didn't think of it. Next is one of my favorite scenes. The cop is heading back, driving down the road, and he sees Jason run across the road, clearly wearing the bag on his head. It's just a quick flash, but it's the first time you see more than just his legs or arms, and it's a really creepy scene. So, Jack Marks, who plays the cop, apparently had never driven a vehicle before, but he didn't tell them that. And I think he almost crashed the car, which is funny because it's just like Officer Dorff in Part 1, because he had never ridden on a motorbike before. Dorff! Anyway, the officer gets out and chases after Jason, and I think this is the only time we ever see Jason being chased. At least adult Jason. I mean, I know he gets chased as a kid in Freddy vs. Jason. So, as Jason's running, he runs through this little stream or puddle, and then the officer gets there, keeping his feet dry by stepping on a big rock. And this little puddle, or whatever it is something we'll see again later. The cop eventually finds himself facing a run-down shack made out of scraps of other people's torn-down barns and houses. Jason basically lives in a recycled house.
What kind of place is this?
Actually, it almost looks like there's a bicycle tire on the roof, like maybe from Crazy Ralph's bike. The inside is a fucking mess. A rusty old fan, a broken chair, a broken nightmare of a toilet. He opens a door and reacts in horror as we see feet approaching behind him, but we don't see whatever he sees. Then we see a hand holding a hammer go up and then come down, claw first, into the officer's head. I'm surprised I didn't put in a MC Hammer, like, Hammer Time clip there. Anyway, so the cop is dead. And I wonder, Jason must move his vehicle or something. Because, yeah, the officer leaves the car right in the middle of the road. So, yeah, Jason must move it, I guess. We then cut to Paul telling the counselors they can go for one last night on the town, but he makes Jeff and Sandra stay there, and then they take Jeff's truck. If I was Jeff, I'd be like,
Asshole, this is my truck!
I mean, really, that's messed up. Imagine someone telling you, you're not allowed to come with us, and then be like, hey, is it okay if we take your truck? So Paul, Ginny, Ted, and all the anonymous background counselors head to the casino bar while the others stay. Terry stays to wait for Muffin, and Scott stays because Terry is staying. Mark stays because, as he says, he's in training, and Vicky stays to be with him. And then, of course, Jeff and Sandra are grounded. So after the bar-bound group leaves, Terry goes for a walk, and Vicky, Mark, Jeff, and Sandra head inside. Then, after they head inside, we see Jason's silhouette as he walks past the lodge. Terry goes down to the lake. She hears a noise, but still, nevertheless, takes her clothes off and goes swimming, while she is evidently being watched. The camera cuts to a deer head mounted on the wall. Is that supposed to be a reference to being horny? Like the cut earlier from Muffin to the hot dogs? A naked woman to a deer with antlers or horns? I don't know. Now, if the deer head had sunglasses like the one in the mutilator, I'd be able to cross it off on the bingo card. Mark and Jeff are arm wrestling, but Sandra leads Jeff upstairs for sex, very similar to how Debbie ends Andy and Shelley's juggling contest by getting Andy to go out with her upstairs for sex in part 3. And it's funny, it happens about the same time in each movie, just like the earlier when they had to stop to get that tree limb out from the middle of the road. Vicky challenges Mark to play one of Ted's handheld electronic games, hockey. Coincidentally, in part 3, not much further along in the movie, we see Jason wearing a hockey mask for the first time. It's funny, I don't recall anyone ever pointing that out before, that how in part 2 they mention hockey, and then that, Jason's hockey mask becomes like the most iconic thing in these movies. We then cut back to Terry, and Scott takes her clothes, and as Terry chases him, he gets caught in a rope trap and is left hanging upside down. Now, I'm not sure how that trap worked. It seemed like Jason, or Paul, as Scott assumes, would have had to have pulled the rope and snaring him. I mean, I Googled snare traps and got results for catching small game, but I didn't want to Google snare traps for humans. Hashtag horror podcast research. Sure, that's what they all say. Terry agrees to help Scott down if he stops being an asshole and goes to find a knife. While Scott waits, Jason comes and grabs Scott by the hair and slices his neck with a machete. The dull end, as you can see, I guess it must have been a real machete and they wanted to be safe. Hey, but maybe Jason sharpened both sides. Who knows? We get a nice but really quick gush of blood. It cuts very quickly back to Terry searching for the knife. In the Shout Factory extended scene, you get to see a gush of blood run all over Scott's face. It's pretty cool. I wish they had kept that in. Fuck censor boards, damn it. Terry finds a pocket knife and goes to cut Scott down, and she finds him dead. She screams, turns, and screams again, presumably coming face to face with Jason. But we don't see anything happen to her, and we immediately cut to a guy playing guitar at the casino bar. Of course, when I was a kid watching this, I'd always say something like, "Wow, Jason can really play guitar. Just like a ring and a bell, go, go." As if anyone wants to hear that again. It does seem like that is what Terry sees, and that's why she screams, a guy playing guitar. It's kind of similar. It's a cut similar to Muffin and then the hot dogs, and then maybe Terry going swimming and the deer head. I don't know. Anyway, the band at the casino bar is actually the Smoky Boys Band, and they're still playing these days. In fact, they just released an album in 2024 called Josephine, featuring a song called I Should Hit You in the Face with a Pie.
Don't need any of their advice. I'm only trying to be nice. I should hit 'em in the face with a pie.
Yeah, I gotta say, that's a catchy tune. Yeah, check them out. Tim Gay and the Smoky Boys Band. So, at the bar, Paul, Ginny, and Ted start talking about what happened with Jeff and Sandra getting picked up, and Ted says,
Yeah, this whole thing's ridiculous, really. You know, 2 of our kids got hauled in today. It was 5 years ago. Some girl, panics and falls out of a canoe. It's absurd.
Absurd? Wait a minute, Ted. What happened to...
What's the problem? If you want to hear about it, man, believe me. Not before lunch.
Okay, so yeah, the movie's a little inconsistent. I still love it, though. By the way, I love the Kiss pinball machine behind them in the bar. Alright, so Ginny questions the possibility that Jason is real and wonders what he would be like now. And as you may know, Sean Cunningham, Tom Savini, and Betsy Palmer, and others who worked on the first one thought it was so stupid and illogical to have Jason be alive. Which, honestly, of course, it is. It makes no sense. Where was Jason for over 20 years? Like, he disappears in the lake, then what? Maybe people just assumed he drowned? I mean, that makes sense, you know. Maybe his father abducted him, that's possible. Maybe the shack Jason lives in was his father's, and he was some hermit, and then when he died, Jason went looking for his mother, and that's when he saw her get beheaded. It's possible. Personally, I do think that Jason did drown and is already supernatural in this film. I think a lot of people feel that he doesn't die until the end of part 4, but he's clearly not a normal human being for surviving this film, and then especially the third one. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of things. Ginny then says,
Well, what would it be like today? Some kind of out-of-control psychopath? A frightened retard?
Okay, I know that I keep derailing, but I have a story that involves the word that Ginny just said, the R word. Back in high school in the 1990s, kids, of course, used that word quite often. One day in English class, or as our high school called it, communication skills, one of the kids in class said the word, and I'm going to say it, retard, and the teacher proceeded to tell the student that the use of the word is incorrect and that the proper shortened version of the word would be retard. Because, as he said and demonstrated by writing the word on the chalkboard that the word retarded is spelled Retarted. So he said it would be retart, not retard. And I remember looking around at the other kids in class like, wait a minute, that's not right. But no one else seemed to question it. If I had just been a little more confident, I wish I would have said something and just annihilated this guy. Who, by the way, I don't think he said anything critical about using the word as an insult. He just criticized the improper pronunciation. Man, it would have been so gratifying to just slowly raise my hand and be like, "Excuse me, Mr. Crit." I'll use his real name, I don't give a shit. I don't think that's right. Wow. I really shouldn't, but I guess I will bleep it. I feel like if I had a dictionary, that would have given me enough confidence to say something. I mean, seriously, what a fucking moron. Alright, back to Friday the 13th, Part 2. Okay, so Ginny suggests that Jason didn't understand death until he witnessed his mother getting killed. Paul dismisses it as just a legend. Then we cut back to Packanack, where Mark is playing with Ted's electronic hockey game. But it totally looks like he's just like on his cell phone sending a Snapchat or something. Jason is apparently watching from outside, and he moves over to another window to watch Jeff and Sandra making out. They then head upstairs. Vicky asks Mark how he ended up in a wheelchair, and Mark says it was a motorcycle accident that paralyzed his legs. And she basically asks him if his penis works, because she undoubtedly wants him. Lauren Marie Taylor, who plays Vicky, really did have a crush on Tom McBride, unaware that he was actually gay. Sadly, Tom McBride passed away when he was only 42. We then see Jeff and Sandra upstairs. Jeff is playing a harmonica, an unusual form of foreplay, and then they start getting busy. Now, originally Sandra was supposed to be nude in the movie, but they had to edit it out because they found out she was only 16 years old. Mark and Vicky kiss and make plans to stay together that night, and then Vicky leaves to get some things from her cabin, where she changes into her prized, probably brand new, maybe lucky, brown underwear. Paul says Jason is a legend. The real legend of this film is those brown panties. Or should I have said the real legend of this film are those brown panties? I know, I'll ask my old English teacher. Apparently, Lauren Marie Taylor has signed a lot of pairs of brown undies at conventions, and she agrees that they are unattractive. And the crazy thing is, she removes a pair of black undies. Vicky, come on. She also sprays or applies perfume to different erogenous zones. Vicky goes to get her hairbrush from her car with a gratuitous shot of her ass in the brown undies as she bends down to look for the brush. Man, those brown undies. They should have the letters UPS on the back or front. By the way, I should say that she still looks great in them. I mean, she pulls it off. Of course, I think that's what she wants Mark to do. She'd look good in a leotard, or as my old English teacher would say, leotard. Anyway, her yellow car, I think, has to be the inspiration for the yellow two-seater car in the Friday the 13th game. Hey, wait a minute. She has a car. I've never thought of this before, but earlier, Paul says...
Okay, who else? We only have 2 cars.
Yeah, he says they only have 2 cars. Well, there's a third yellow car. I mean, it's a 2-seater, but 2 more people could have went. Paul must have learned to count from my old English teacher. It starts to rain and thunderstorm outside, and Mark goes outside onto the porch to look for Vicky. As he's waiting and calling her name, Jason slams a machete into Mark's face, and he rolls down the steps backwards in his wheelchair. the machete still embedded into his face. Embedded? Embedded? See, now I question everything. Fuck you, Mr. Anyway, it's a great kill, Mark's death. It's so tragic and sad, but it's done really well. The machete again appears to be backwards. I also love the echoing effect of Mark's scream when he's killed. Echoing effect. Echoing effect. Echoing effect. Fuck. Anyway, Jeff and Sandra finish having sex, and Jason enters the building, grabs the spear that Ted used as the prop to scare everyone the night before, and Jason heads upstairs, ditching the monster mask on the steps. What if he put that mask on and that became Jason's mask? Thankfully, it didn't. As Jeff and Sandra lay in bed, we see Jason come in behind them, and Sandra sees him but is helpless as Jeff is lying on top of her. Jason thrusts the spear, impaling both Jeff and Sandra, but we only see the head of the spear come down from under the mattress and into the floor with blood on it. The Shout Factory Blu-ray shows the extended scene that you could see on the back of the old VHS cassette. Again, no nudity. Of course, that was deleted since, as I said before, Marta Kober was only 16. This is another cool death scene, very similar to a death in a 1971 Mario Bava film, A Bay of Blood, also known as Twitch of the Death Nerve. A guy also gets a large knife in the face like Mark in that movie. This film definitely may have taken those deaths and copied them, but definitely check out A Bay of Blood. I'll cover it on this podcast eventually. Coincidentally, A Bay of Blood was released on Amy Steele's 12th birthday. And whether they stole those deaths for this movie or not, they still work in this movie. They're different enough, and they're cool. Okay, we cut back to Ginny, Paul, and Ted. Ginny and Paul leave Ted and the other counselors at the bar, Paul telling Ted to head back when the bar closes. As they run to Ginny's car, you can see a guy running up into the bar through the rain. This apparently is Bill Randolph, who played Jeff. So right after getting killed, suddenly he's heading into the bar. I don't drink, but I think if a bunch of assholes took off with my truck and then I got impaled with a spear, I'd be ready for a double. After Paul and Ginny leave, Ted asks an old man, who looks like some rural pimp granddaddy, if there's any after-hour places nearby, and the guy says there are, which I find surprising because it doesn't really seem like an area that would have a 24-hour nightclub or strip joint or whatever, but what do I know? Now, I'm really disappointed that I didn't see a dartboard in the bar or a background character looking right at the camera. Looks like I won't get a bingo yet. Incidentally, this is the last we see of Ted and the other, background counselors that we never really get to know. They survived the film. I'd like to think that Ted and the girl working at the bar who he had a crush on eloped and moved somewhere far away and opened up a shop where people come and play role-playing games or something and lived happily ever after. Lucky Ted. Kind of like how my old English teacher spelled the R word, T-E-D is not D-E-D. Meanwhile, back at Packanack, Vicky returns and can't find Mark. She calls his name and heads upstairs to check on Sandra and Jeff. And I've read a lot of people make comments about how silly it is that Vicky goes upstairs, presumably looking for Mark. But actually, she goes upstairs and she knocks on the door and she calls out for Jeff or Sandra. So she's not actually looking for Mark upstairs. She enters the room they were in and she approaches the bed, and Jason pops up from under a sheet, and we see him for the first time clearly wearing a flour sack or potato sack, whatever kind of sack he has over his head. It's creepy and effective, and I'm glad he wears it in this. I love the hockey mask, too. I love both. Yeah, it's possible to love both. I give you permission. I love the creepy eye with the only one eye hole in the mask. It's like Black Christmas vibes with the evil eye. And I used to think that Jason stole the overalls he's wearing from Alice at the beginning of the movie, but the overalls that Alice is wearing are like checkered or plaid and kind of greenish. But like I said, I used to watch this on a black and white TV half the time, and plus the quality wasn't very good on the VHS copy that we made. So I I think I also assumed that he took the clothes because he takes the clothes in part 3, but yeah, they're not the same. And before I recorded this, I googled if Jason steals Alice's clothes, and the answer I got mentions part 3 where when Jason does steal those clothes, and they said that he stole them to evade capture from the police. I mean, maybe, but I've never really thought of that. I don't think Jason is scared of the police, but so anyway, yeah, Jason jumps up and scares the shit out of Vicky, slices her leg with a knife. She backs into a wall where Jeff is hanging by a sheet tied around his neck. Jason approaches her with the knife held up ready to stab her, and it's really cool. He has like a bruised thumb, and Vicky is paralyzed with fear, I guess, because she makes no attempt whatsoever to get away. She becomes like Mark, and I'm not trying to be funny. What I mean is Mark was in a car accident which caused physical damage, leaving his legs paralyzed, and Vicky now finds herself psychologically paralyzed with fear. Jason stabs and kills Vicky, and it's ironic that Mark, whose legs were paralyzed, ends up making a better getaway from Jason after he's dead than Vicky does when she's still alive. I I think that's irony, but once again, my old English teacher, I don't know. Now, just like the first Friday the 13th, I like the characters in this one. Well, Scott, maybe not exactly, but Mark and Vicky's deaths are so tragic and sad. They should have had the same fate as Ted and the girl at the bar. Next, Ginny and Paul return and enter the lodge just after Jason drags Vicky's body down the stairs. Now, this is where the movie really becomes tense. They sense that something's wrong, then Ginny finds the bed Jeff and Sandra were killed in all full of blood, and then the lights go out. They go back downstairs, and as Ginny looks around in the darkness, she says,
Paul, there's someone in this room.
We then see Jason rise out of the darkness and attack Paul, and they start fighting. Ginny backs away where she can't see them. Things go quiet, and as she steps forward, Jason stands up and Ginny backs into a bathroom, holding the door closed, eventually letting go, and she goes to open a window when Jason appears and smashes his arm through the window. She then runs and locks herself in the kitchen. Jason tries to open the door. We see the doorknob jiggle, and Ginny grabs a kitchen knife and waits by the door as Jason continues to try to open it. Suddenly, a pitchfork crashes through the door, and Ginny opens the pantry door, and Crazy Ralph's body falls out, almost hitting her. She climbs out of a window and runs to her car, and she no longer has the knife, so I can cross off character dropping or doesn't take a weapon when they should. All I need is the use of a shovel and a background character looking right at the camera for a bingo. Ginny then tries to start her car, and of course, it won't start. It's funny watching this scene. I was waiting for her to bang her head against the steering wheel. Then I realized that's the wrong movie. That's Back to the Future. Ginny leans back, and suddenly Jason pops up right outside the driver's side window. He tries opening the door, but it's locked. He ducks back down and disappears. The car shakes, and then the pitchfork comes through the roof of the car, and then Jason's hand. I always assumed he climbed up on the roof, and I think that was the idea, but then they show him standing outside the passenger side door, so I don't know. Now, to play Jason's advocate, why didn't he shove the pitchfork through the roof on the side she was sitting? Or, like, right through the window? It's funny how Jason and killers in other movies seem to get sloppy at the end of the movies. Everyone else gets killed quickly and unexpectedly, but now all of a sudden he's struggling. Ginny kicks open the passenger door and Jason falls down a little incline, I think. So, like I did for the first one and the Mutilator episode, I have a Jason injury list to keep track of his injuries. So, I'll add hit by car door in torso area and knocked to the ground. Ginny runs and hides behind a bush, and when Jason approaches, she kicks him in the nuts. Yep, right in the noise and cherries. That's a reference to part 6. Ginny then runs to Vicky's yellow car, finds it locked, and has to duck down and hide behind it as Jason comes. As Jason turns and heads one way, she heads up a trail the other way. By the way, I feel like Jason would have seen her hiding behind that car because her head is like above the hood of the car, but I don't know, he only has one eye in that sack, so who knows. A little bit up ahead, Jason jumps out of the woods but misses her, and Steve Dash, who played Jason through most of this movie, apparently landed on a pickaxe that was left on the ground. On the ground, or I guess in a hole that he fell into in this shot. I'm not sure if it is in this part though, because he doesn't have the pickaxe yet, so yeah, I'm not sure. That could be inaccurate. But it happened at some point, allegedly, and he had to make his first trip to the hospital. Ginny hides behind a tree and runs back to one of the cabins, but Jason figures out that she must have doubled back and goes back. We see him enter a cabin and start looking around. We then see Ginny is hiding under the bed. Jason ends up standing right next to her, then walks away. We see the shadow of the pitchfork on the floor, which is a really nice touch. Then a rat comes by right up to her fucking face, and we see a puddle of urine form on the floor at the end of the bed. Now there's a debate whether the pee is from Ginny or the rat. According to director Steve Miner, the pee is from the rat. I say, fuck that. I do not accept that. It's so much better if it's Ginny. Not because I have a weird pee thing. It just makes sense. It makes it scarier. I mean, I would pee my pants, for sure. I mean, seriously, Jason's in the room. This guy wearing a sack on his head is after her. She's hiding under the bed, hoping he doesn't look under the bed. Then here comes this rat that's maybe going to give her away. Maybe she even wants to scream just because she hates rats, and she can't. She's been out drinking, alcohol's a diuretic, she hasn't peed since she got here, she peed her pants. I'd probably shit my pants. My underwear would be brown like Vicky's. Plus, I mean, that's a lot of pee for a rat, I would think. So as far as I'm concerned, it's from Ginny. Anyway, Jason kind of looks back before seemingly leaving the cabin. Ginny hears the door to the cabin close and slowly crawls out from under the bed, but she looks up and screams as she sees Jason standing on a chair with the pitchfork. However, the chair breaks, Jason falls to the floor, and his pitchfork also breaks. Ginny goes and gets the chainsaw that we saw her use earlier in the movie, starts it up and attacks Jason with it, although she doesn't end up cutting him. He backs away, eventually falling over a little table, and Steve Dash does a good job reacting to it. Although he may have been legitimately scared if this was filmed after one or both of the times he ended up at the ER. Of course, I'm not sure that the chainsaw was actually running, or more than likely they just removed the chain. So as Jason falls, the chainsaw conks out. Then Ginny picks up a chair, hits Jason, busting the chair to pieces on his back, and he is temporarily incapacitated. But I don't think he's unconscious. It does seem like it because he doesn't move, but so I don't think I'll mark that off on the bingo card yet. If she hit him in the head, then I probably would. I will add to Jason's injury list 2 falls, hit with a chair to the back. Ginny runs off into the woods, and she ends up walking through the same stream or puddle we saw earlier when the cop was running after Jason. Oddly, a lot of people speculate that that stream is actually rat pee. Just kidding. Now, I mentioned earlier that we would see this stream again, and it is funny that they show it so many times, like people running through it. And I've always wondered, there's an episode of Salute Your Shorts, an old show on Nickelodeon, where it's the second episode, I believe. It's kind of a Halloween themed episode where they have this character, Zeke the plumber, who one of the characters, Budnick, tells a story of. He's like this vengeful spirit who lost his nose and has no sense of smell. But it's a very cool and creepy episode. It's probably most people's favorite episode. But in that episode, they show characters running through a stream very similar to the way they do in here. And also, Zeke the plumber is wearing overalls and a plaid like flannel shirt, just like Jason in this movie. Also, one of the characters ends up hanging upside down just like Scott does in this movie. Then again, I recently watched Tourist Trap, and in the movie Tourist Trap, there's a scene where a character runs through a little stream, and the killer in that movie kind of also looks and sounds a lot like Zeke. So I kind of wonder if that episode is inspired by both Tourist Trap and this film. I'd love to talk to the writer of that episode or the director. If you've never seen that episode of Salute Your Shorts, I know it's available on Amazon Prime. You can buy the episodes. Yeah, I highly recommend you check it out, especially if you're a fan of this movie and Tourist Trap. And not, it's not really that scary, but it's a cool episode. All right. Anyway, after they both cross Rat Piss Creek, Ginny, of course, ends up at Jason's shack. She sees a lantern in the window and she calls out for help. She goes inside and there's a great shot where Ginny's inside looking around, and through a window you see Jason off in the distance running towards her. And I remember years ago at the local theater, they did a screening of this movie around Halloween, and I went to see it. And there were these two young girls sitting a couple of rows in front of me, and when this part came on, one of them was like, "Oh my God, there he is!" And they both screamed, and it was great to see in the theater. It was a great experience, because it is a terrifying and well-done scene, if you let it be, Again, I always say it's so easy to look at a movie, an older movie like this, and say, oh, that's not terrifying. I've seen that 1,000 times before. But again, you have to put yourself in that position and just realize how terrifying that would be. But I'm beating a dead horse, I guess. All right, so Ginny sees him and screams herself, and she barricades herself in the room the cop was looking in when he got killed. Wait a minute. Okay, never mind. I just had to double check my bingo card to see if I had somebody barricading a door as something to cross off. But no, I don't on this one. So yeah, Ginny barricades herself in there, and Jason starts trying to get in, and then we see what's in the room. Jason's mother's head with her sweater laying next to it and a bunch of lit candles. On the floor are the bodies of the cop, Terry, and Alice, still with the ice pick stuck in the side of her head. Oh, and presumably the machete used to decapitate Mrs. Voorhees. It's funny, just picture Jason lighting all those candles. That's so weird. I wonder if they're scented candles. Oh, and I should add that Alice's body is severely decayed, because I guess it's been there for 5 years or so. That's probably why he has the candles. Ginny screams at the sight of all this. Jason picks up a pickaxe or mattock and starts breaking the door down, which seems to be made of sheet metal. Ginny, figuring this has to be Jason and Jason's mother's head, puts on Mrs. Voorhees' sweater, picks up the machete and hides it behind her back, and just as Jason gets in there, she says,
Jason! It's all done, Jason. You've done your job well, and Mommy is pleased. That's a good boy. Now come to Mommy. Come on.
It's funny how they established her vehicle not starting and the fact that she's studying child psychology in the same scene when she first gets there in her vehicle, because then they can use that later. As I said, her vehicle didn't start, and then she can use her child psychology on Jason now. So as Ginny is talking to Jason, pretending to be his mother, we see that Jason is actually seeing Ginny as his mother, and Betsy Palmer did return to shoot this quick scene. At one point, Jason raises the pickaxe, or, mattock, M-A-T-T-O-C-K, not M-A-D-D-O-C-K, Mr. Crit. Alright. Yeah, Jason raises it, and Ginny says,
Jason, Mother is talking to you!
Jason, Mother is talking to you.
Come on. That's my boy.
Come, kneel down.
Jason does kneel down, and slowly, as she repeats, "Good boy," she raises the machete, but as she does, Jason sees his mother's head and snaps out of his trance, and as Ginny brings the machete down, he blocks it with the mattock, and the machete gets knocked out of her hand. Jason then slashes her leg with the mattock, and suddenly Paul enters out of nowhere and grabs Jason, and they start fighting. Rafters start falling, and they keep fighting. Ginny grabs the machete next to Terry's body, and in wonderful slow motion, Ginny brings the machete down through his shoulder and into his upper chest. I love that you see his eye move around, and then he falls to the ground. So, I'll add machete sliced to the shoulder to the Jason injury list. Also, now I believe he is unconscious, so I'll cross that off the bingo card. Now, when Ginny brings the machete down and Jason blocked it, the machete accidentally cut Steve Dash's finger, who was playing Jason, and that was his second trip to the hospital. And when he got there, he had the prop machete in his shoulder, and the staff at the hospital originally thought that was why he was there. And he had to be like, no, this isn't real. I cut my finger. Although, I'm a little confused, actually, because he didn't have the machete in his shoulder yet at that point. I can't recall. Maybe his finger got cut when the machete goes into his shoulder? I don't know. It seems like there's conflicting stories, or maybe I just made part of it up in my head. Anyway, Ginny pulls Jason's sack mask off, and they react, but we don't see his face. As they're leaving, and I never noticed this before,
You never paid any attention.
but Ginny removes Mrs. Voorhees' sweater and tosses it on the ground outside of Jason's shack. They cross Rat Piss Creek yet again, and they go back to the cabin where Ginny was hiding under the bed, and we see her pants aren't wet, but I say that's simply an error. She did pee her pants, damn it. As they embrace and try to process what they've gone through, they hear a noise coming from the door. Ginny grabs the pitchfork that Jason left on the floor, and Paul grabs the broken handle of the pitchfork. And then he opens the door, and there's Muffin. Looking adorable as ever with her purple ribbon, Paul picks Muffin up, sets her back down. Muffin goes to jump into Ginny's arms when suddenly Jason crashes through the window behind her and grabs her. Jason still has the machete in his shoulder, and we get to see his face. Before we owned a copy of this movie, I could only see this on TV at my grandma's house, and I always waited for this part because you get to see his face. It's all misshapen and, like, deformed. So, yeah, I always thought it was cool because, oh man, that's what Jason looks like. Now, in this part, Jason is played by Warrington Gillette, which I always found funny that this hairiest version of Jason is played by a guy named Gillette. Is that irony? I don't know. Again, Mr. By the way, I love the kind of moaning sound that Jason makes when he's jumping through the window. What? That's not right. Those are the Kipper kids from UHF. One of which, by the way, is married to Bette Midler. This is the groaning sound that Jason makes. I make the same sound in the morning when I have to get up to go to work. Or pretty much when I have to go anywhere. So anyway, Jason grabs Ginny and pulls her down off screen, and then the screen turns white, and we cut to Ginny on a gurney being put into the back of an ambulance. She calls out for Paul, asking where he is, but she doesn't get an answer. And we never find out. We cut to Jason's shack, which we see the fallen rafters from Paul and Jason's fight. The camera zooms in on Mrs. Voorhees' head, the candles are still lit, and then the credits roll. So, what exactly happened? Well, one thing, I didn't get a bingo, but here's what I think. Okay, Jason somehow finds out where Alice lives. Wait, that's going back way too far. Okay, forget that. First of all, Jason unfortunately did kill poor Muffin. So Ginny uses Jason's mother's sweater to distract him. Jason ends up attacking her. Paul comes in, and he and Jason fight. Ginny machetes Jason in the shoulder. They look at his face. Paul carries Ginny back to the cabin, and on the way there, she passes out. So Muffin coming to the door, Jason crashing through the window, and Ginny's pants being dry, all a dream. Friday the 13th Part 3 starts out with Jason in his shack, removing the machete and setting it on the floor, and then getting himself up off the floor. So Paul was either already in the ambulance or possibly in the back of a police car. I mean, they would surely want to question him. In fact, as far as they know, it was Paul who did all this. I'm sure no one would be like, oh, I bet it was that kid that drowned in 1957. It is odd that they don't show Paul, and a lot of people assume he's dead because of that, but, and I know this is silly, but I don't think that would make sense. Unless he died when they get back to the cabin after leaving Jason's shack, I guess that's possible. But in my mind and heart, I think both Paul and Ginny survive, along with Ted and the other counselors who stayed at the bar. Okay, I'll get back to that, but I don't want to forget to go over the Friday the 13th Part 2 Jason injury list. So this is what it took to kill Jason, or at least bring Jason down. So he's hit with a car door in the torso, knocked to the ground. He's kicked in the nuts. He has 2 falls. A chair is broken over his back, and a machete is sliced through his shoulder and into his chest. So yeah, I didn't add any possible injury from broken glass when he jumps through the window, because again, I feel that was just a dream. I don't know, what do you think?
I think you're drunk. I'll drink to that.
I might have to ask somebody else their opinion on this. I think I'm going to conjure up my friend Clayton. I'll see what he has to say about this. All right, I'm going to light some candles here. 1, 2, 3, and 4. That ought to do it. Okay, now I need an image, like a picture for Clayton's image to appear on. Let's see. Here we go. I'll use this. I'll put this picture up here of of former host of Press Your Luck, Peter Tamarkin. So that's where Clayton's image will appear on. And now I just need to say the magic words to conjure him. And yeah, for him, I guess that would be Ret Al AC. Ret Al AC. Ret Al AC. Clayton. Clayton, can you hear me?
What the hell? Hello?
I can't believe this worked. I conjured you. I conjured you by way of Peter Tamarkin.
You conjured me?
Yeah, just like the Ninja Turtles do in the first Ninja Turtle movie with Splinter.
I do live near the Conjuring house, actually, only a few miles away.
Oh, that's
Uh,
probably why this worked.
what do you want? I'm at dinner.
Oh shit, sorry. I just wanted to know your opinion. I wanted to talk to you about Friday the 13th Part 2.
Okay, if you're gonna conjure me, I mean, this is appropriate conversation. I can't be too mad when we're gonna talk about some of my favorite movies, so I guess
Yeah,
this is
yeah.
okay.
Oh man, the only thing is I just recorded like an hour and a half talking about this movie. So I think I'm going to have to turn this into a two-parter. So if you could just stay quiet for a moment, just pretend like I'm recording this after we recorded, just as if you're not even here anymore. Yeah, perfect. And yeah, everyone, thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this even a tiny bit, and come back for the next episode, which will be Friday the 13th Part 2, Part 2. So yeah, all right, I'll be right back. I love Harry Manfredini's score. I think he's very underrated as far as scoring horror. That sounds just like Jason at the end of this movie. He carried his mother's head in a gunny sack, then he put it on his head and he went to his oh God. Oh, that should do me in. Ginny and Paul leave Ted and the other counselors at the ball. At the ball. And then Jason decapitates Cinderella. Fuck. I'm just gonna blame everything on Mr. now. Now, I'd like to think that Ted and the girl behind the bar, like, ran off together and got eloped. And it would have been so gratifying to just slowly raise my hand and be like, "Excuse me, Mr. Crit." I'll use his real name, I don't give a shit. Stephen Michael, left-handed, Capricorn, AB negative blood type, drives a Mazda.
Okay.
Clayton? Are you there? Is that you?
Hello? Who the
Whoa!
hell? Who the hell is this? Where are you coming from?
It's Ryan. I conjured you.
What the hell? I'm at dinner. uh,
Hey, Weird Al, it's your cousin. Your cousin, Weird Marvin Yankovic? You know that new sound you're looking for? Well, listen to this. Way down in New Jersey, killing counselors and teens. Way back up in the woods among the evergreens, there stood a shack made of junk canopies, where lived a country boy named Jason Voorhees. He never learned to talk or swim so well, but he could swing a machete just like a ring and a bell. Go, go.
I'm tired of you mouthing off. You think you know everything, but you don't. I should hit you in the face with a pie.